All right, this is going to be 6.3, and you will have all of these definitions that indicate specific words. We're now going to be writing from words into expressions and then eventually going into equations. So these are all listed in your notes. Most importantly is that you need to remember that subtraction right here, so I'm going to write here, is that order matters, because we know that 3 minus 5 is not the same as 5 minus 3. So they're going to give you a lot of subtraction problems where you're going to need to make sure you understand the order. So when we're translating into expressions, there is no equal sign in an expression. So we're just going to go word for word into direct translations. So when we have 3 more than x, that is going to be written as 3 plus x. Now you could write x plus 3. Okay, so I'm going to put this as another alternative. You could have x plus 3, and both of those answers would be correct. Now this one, the order is going to make a difference. So I always tell students, if I have $10 and you have 8 less than me, then you know that you have $2. So what's being subtracted is the 8, okay? The 8 is being subtracted. So I make a note of that because when I write this, it's going to be y minus 8. And that is not the same thing if you write 8 minus y, okay? If it says less than, that number has to follow the minus sign, and that's the number that's being subtracted. All right, and the next one, they say 6 decreased by 4 times y. So as we translate this, 6 decreased by 4 times y. Now, sometimes students put parentheses around the y, but it's not necessary. You definitely don't put an x like a multiplication symbol. You don't put a dot, but that would be the correct representation right there, is 6 minus 4y. And the next one, it says 7 times x increased by 4. And I just like to write it exactly as I see it, okay? Now, if they don't give you a variable, so here it says just a number, I'm going to use n for my number, okay? So when this says 5 less than twice a number, the 5 is being subtracted. So your answer will be 2n minus 5. Now, in the next problem, you're going to look for opportunities where you may have to have parentheses. So in this case, when it says the sum of 8 and t, that means we're going to add 8 plus t, and then we're going to divide that entire sum by 2. That's one way to write it. Another way would be to write 8 plus t on the top of the division bar and then put 2 underneath. Each one of those is acceptable. You must have parentheses in the first one. You can have parentheses here, but you don't have to, okay? Now, put a star next to this one because this one often gets some students confused. Anytime it says times a math word, and sum is a math word, that is an indicator that you need parentheses, okay? So times a math word means you need parentheses. So we're going to write it like this: 3 times the sum, and the sum is between some number and 7. Now, the problem with this is that they're going to want the simplified answer. So you have to be able to write the translation before you can simplify it. And so then you're going to distribute, and you're going to get 3n plus 21. Okay? Now, the next one says the quotient of 8 and y, quotient means divide, 8 divided by y, decreased by 3 times x. Direct translation, word for word for word. Now, these next problems I'm going to set up into the equation, but I'm not going to solve them, okay? You can look at the completed notes to go ahead and figure out the solving. The hard part about these is just to simply set up the equations. All right, so 5 less than a number, and then this indicates that it is an equation. So we're going to write, and I'm just going to use, let's just use x for a number, because I looked in my math lab and they always ask you to use x or y, okay? So I'm going to write 5 less than a number, which means that I'm going to take x minus 5, and that is 20. And then you're going to solve it. Okay, a number, x, increased by 8 is 12. So we're just practicing writing our equations. Now, this next one, you're probably going to see something similar to this on your test. It says 8 less than 3 times a number, and that's one side of the equation. So 8 is being subtracted from 3 times a number, and that is 6 times the number increased by 10, okay? And so now you've got variables on both sides. You're going to have to move your variables over and then undo addition or subtraction, and then undo multiplication and division. All right, this last one is going to be a number increased by 6 is 3 less than twice the number. And I'm going to tell you, students are going to miss this because they are not paying attention to the subtraction, okay? So those are direct word for word problems. Now we're going to get into some application problems that are a little bit harder to solve because we've got to figure out what we know and what we don't know and how we're going to define our variable. So I often recommend that you write out an equation in words and then go back and replace what you're looking for, okay? So in this one, you've got a copier that was purchased for $2,300, and then a protection plan, which is 2 cents per copy, and per means multiplication. And we know that she spent a total of that amount in a year, okay? So we're going to define our variable, let C. We are looking for the number of copies. Let C equal the number of copies that she made, okay? So we're going to write the cost of the copier plus 2 cents per copy, and that equals the total amount spent, okay? So now we're going to replace what we know. We know the cost of the copier was $2,300. We know we have to pay 2 cents times the number of copies that we're making, and that's what we don't know. And then we know that she spent $2,626. And now we're able to solve. We are going to subtract 2,300. And like I said, once you get the equation, you should be able to solve it. The hard part is getting the equation set up. And then we will divide by 0.02. And that says that she made 16,300 copies, okay? All right, in the next one, we are talking about land parcels, which is just a plot of land. So let's kind of draw a picture here. We've got this parcel, or let's see, and we're going to cut it into 3 pieces. We got the first plot, the second plot, and then we've got this third plot. And all we know is that one parcel of land is going to be 3 times as large as the other 2, okay? So I'm going to let P equal a parcel of land, which is just a plot, okay? And all I know is that the one piece of land, and it doesn't matter which one, I just call it this one right here. One piece of land is 3 times the amount of each of the others. So I let the first parcel be P, the second parcel be P, and that makes the third plot is going to be 3 times as large. And now I know that all of these plots add up to 100 acres. So if I write my equation out in words, the first plot plus the second plot plus the third plot equals the total acres. And so we're going to have P plus 3P is equal to 100. And then I'm going to collect all my like terms. So that makes 5P equals 100. And then I'm going to divide by 5. And so P comes out to be 20 acres. So that says this size is 20 acres. This one is 20 acres. And this one is 3 times 20 acres, or 60. All right, the next problem that is dealing with a sandbox, you are going to have a rectangular sandbox. So that didn't come out very good. Let's try that again. So we have a rectangular sandbox. And all we know is that this guy has 34 feet of wood, and we're going to be looking for perimeter, okay? So when you look at the description of the sides, we have a length as one side, and we have a width as another side. And all we know is that the length is going to be 3 feet greater than the width. So I always tell students the word that is mentioned second, length is mentioned first, width is mentioned second. That's going to be my single variable, okay? So I have to have one variable that is defined, and then the next one, the length, is going to be 3 feet greater than. And if it's 3 feet greater than, it's going to be 3 plus W. Not 3 times as big, it's 3 feet greater. So then that means this side is also 3 plus W, and this side is W. And I know that the distance around that sandbox has to add up to the total feet of wood that I have. So I'm going to write out I'm going to start here, okay? So I'm going to take the first width plus the length plus the second width plus the length, and that has to equal 34. And then I'm going to collect my like terms, 1W, 2 Ws, 3 Ws, 4 Ws. And then I'm going to take 3 and 3 and make 6, and that equals 34. So then I'm able to subtract 6 on both sides. 4W is equal to 28. And then I'm going to divide by 4. And that says the width of the sandbox needs to be 7 feet. If we know the width, now we can figure out the length by taking 3 plus 7. And so the length should be 10 feet. So we have a 10-foot by 7-foot sandbox. Okay? All right, now let's get to a necklace. And so we know when we buy something, we have to pay sales tax, and that sales tax is usually a percentage of a particular price that we're paying. Whether we're adding it sales tax or whether we're taking it off will mean a discount, okay? So I'm going to let, since we're talking about necklace, I'm going to let N equal the cost of the necklace, okay? So now I'm going to say, we know that the cost of the necklace plus 8%, which we're going to write as 0.08. And so actually, let's just write it out in words first. So let's go ahead and write 8%. 8% of the cost, and that equals the total price. Okay, so again, practice writing it out in words so now that you can replace. The cost of the necklace is what we don't know. That's N. 8% we're going to write as a decimal without the percent sign. Of means multiplication, and the cost of the necklace, again, we don't know. And then it equals $34.56. And so now we have like terms. We have 1N plus 0.08N, which makes 1.08N. And that gives me $34.56. And so then I can divide through by 1.08. And that tells me the original cost of the necklace before tax is $32. So I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to do proportions in another video. And I will upload that as soon as I finish that.